I felt compelled to make today's video about a topic that I'm not sure will be controversial, perhaps to some, maybe a little bit closer to home for others, or indeed just a wake-up call. And this is, of course, as you'll know from the title and thumbnail, around the surge in luxury thefts that I have noticed, not just in the last couple of years or so, but in the most recent months. It seems to have been day after day, story after story about some small business, big brand or individual getting their luxury goods stolen. And I think this is really, to say the least anyway, an epidemic spreading the Western world in particular. And the frequency of which that I'm seeing on social media or in the news is just staggering, that I just had to come on here and address the topic. And I felt particularly compelled not just to validate, if it's just me, if it's other people as well that are noticing this increase in crime across the board, let alone with luxury goods as it pertains to our community, but also because I have had a personal experience of theft in my life. I mean, I've covered this in other videos, so I'm not going to drain them too much, how it's affected me, where I've had something stolen or a lot of near misses that I can thankfully report. Nothing did get stolen, but life is long and you never know what could crop up. And touch wood, recently we had an incident at home around potentially someone stealing our cars, and I'm not going to go into that whole ordeal, but everything just feels very close to home recently, and it's a real wake-up call. And obviously I'm a luxury content creator. My channel is largely focused on this particular topic, and really enjoying your handbags, your shoes, your ready-to-wear, whatever it is, to the fullest because you've earned it. In fact, I've actually filmed a video before this one. I'm not sure of the sequencings of things now, that things are a little bit different, but talking about how I do strongly believe, and I still do, by the way, that people shouldn't feel afraid to wear their luxury goods or enjoy them, and people shouldn't be sticking them on their shelves or tucked away in their boxes, in their wardrobes, because I also think that defeats the purpose of owning them in the first place. And by no means am I contradicting the messages either in that video or my channel. As much as the next person who watches my channel, that I love these things, and there is more to life than luxury goods, but I do enjoy something shiny. I'm a little magpie when it comes to that. But I cannot ignore the fact that these statistics, the number of crimes, how it affects people, not just online, because you might think, oh, it would never happen to me, but people I know in my personal life have become victims, not necessarily to luxury theft, but just crime in general, I suppose, has just gone on the rise. I really got my thinking cap on, and I want to share my personal views with you, so that's a little bit of a disclaimer here. At least from my lived experience, from those of my peers, from what I've seen online, there seems to be a huge surge in crimes. So in the last 5-10 years, I think we can all agree the political, the economic, the cultural situation has been very tense. It feels like there is something bubbling up. And I think as it pertains to crime, or the lack of policing the crimes, there has definitely been a distinct relaxation in the Western world over the last few years, and eventually coming up to many months recently, and even on the daily. I am literally seeing on my feed, I am seeing so many videos of CCTV as well as literal first-person footage of criminals in masks, balaclavas, either running in or walking in, stealing loads of bags. They're literally grabbing things like it was supermarket sweep, if you watch that, and they are looting the whole stores. They're pillaging the whole stores. And I know this is not just something that is luxury related. I know in America in particular, there are instances where even Targets are being looted. In fact, I think at one point way back when, in the recent past, but still a few years ago in the UK when we had the London riots, people were even looting bags of rice and things like that. It was crazy, the things that people were stealing. But back to the topic at hand, I've seen a lot of videos, footage, firsthand of thefts happening in designer and luxury department stores in France, in Spain, in London, of course, in the US. It's really obviously shocking and jarring, but I feel like at times it feels a little bit desensitizing. It's just, oh, another one has happened. And it's really, really sad because, look, I know people have opinions on luxury items, but I think we can all agree that what individuals decide to do is not something that directly affects you, nor is any of your business. It's becoming commonplace, or too commonplace, and bystanders either in the store or even just the police, they're not doing anything about it, and that's why I think we're seeing it picking up. And so it's not just the luxury stores though, I'm seeing this happening to small, medium-sized businesses. For example, in the UK, Celia, which is I'm sure a lot of you are aware of if you're UK-based or London-based, they are a very popular, well-known luxury marketplace. They sell pre-loved, sometimes new, designer goods, and they had released CCTV of two seemingly young women, or at least middle-aged women, going in and just stealing a handbag off the shelf and just running afterwards. And of course, nothing can be done about these individuals. They will not be brought to justice. And Celia released a statement accompanying that footage that they now no longer keep their high-ticket items, their bags and whatnot, Chanel, Hermes or equivalent, on the store shelves, because, you know, these things happen nowadays. And you're seeing a lot of stores even put tags, so many cages or tags or whatever. They're removing even, I've noticed this in London recently, and I'd be curious in your local areas, in your local cities, if this is true as well, where they used to have, you know, your Rolex watches or your Van Cleef Arpels jewelry out on display in the windows, even on the Harrods and whatnot. They started taking those down in certain store locations. But also this is happening not just to big businesses or small to medium businesses. This is also happening to individuals, both on the influencer side. So obviously Tamara, I've covered on my channel before, you know, Kim K, I mean, she is a big one, obviously. But I also know from my Instagram scrolling that influencers such as one called Brian Boy, I think he's quite popular in the fashion scene, amongst many others, by the way, that I'm just not able to reel off because there's literally so many instances of this right now. And sorry, the sun is setting, so apologies for lighting discrepancies right now. In fact, let me try and go and fix it. I digress. Let's go back to the topic at hand. Yeah, so Brian Boy, he was just out and about, probably in the touristy sites in Barcelona, and that happened to him. So it can literally happen to anybody. It's really sad that this is almost your new normal, your new reality, if you will, because it certainly hasn't felt like it was commonplace in the last 5-10 years, even wider than that. And it's not the place that I grew up in, at least in the Western world. It's not the London that I knew, but things are really, really changing. And that's why I felt compelled to make this video, to point out, I suppose, the uncomfortable truths that I think a lot of people are, especially in our community, are denying. This is happening on such a frequent basis. Not only does it make me a little bit desensitized, but I'm also thinking, you know, this is realistically going to happen at some point to me. It's jarring that to feel like you're being watched potentially and you're being followed. And a lot of these people, I'm no doubt that Brian Boy was watched, or even for businesses that these people came in as just plain clothes, you know, potential buyers, and they scouted out everything. It really feels like you're being violated. And I'm sure other people who have been victims as well will feel like nowhere is safe, no one is safe, you cannot trust anybody. And what a way to live your life in. I think, and this is going to get potentially a bit political, a bit pointed, forewarning here, but this is the reality as I'm seeing it play out, as the statistics and instances tell themselves. But I've noticed all these instances have obviously occurred in, surprise, surprise, the Western world. Really funny how London, and I think the UK in general, are the most surveyed country in the world, and yet these kind of crimes we are not bringing to justice. It is just mad that we have the most abundant wealth of data and information, and we cannot find these people, let alone put them to justice. And it just really makes you think, as a taxpayer who's paying a significant amount, that these crimes are going unpunished, and this encourages people. I think, you know, you don't see this happening in Asia, you don't see this happening in the Middle East, because people know that it's just not worth it, because the crime is not worth the punishment that you get. I think people in those other countries, continents perhaps you could say, are more willing to do what it takes to protect what people have. And look, while I'm not saying that those countries or continents are perfect, there is no perfect system. I do believe that everyone has their flaws, but I do think some have a more harmonious society, shall we say, than others right about now. And you can see it. We are descending in the West into lawlessness, and I think it's reflective in the policy or lack thereof. It is reflected also in the culture. There is so much disrespect for positions of power and governing bodies are not taken seriously. There's been a distinct softening on crime, a lack of punishment. It just makes the West look comical, and you're seeing that therefore in this surge in crime. And our governments and governing bodies are not really doing much about it, which is why it seems so commonplace. And while in one way I know change doesn't happen overnight, I think in the example, I'll just use one for illustrative purposes, a country like El Salvador has drastically turned around its very brutal image of being, I think, the crime capital of the world. There's been a bunch of reforms, controversial, so we're not going to get into that, but it is possible if you do have somebody hard on crime. It really does make the UK or the West look like a third world country, especially as somebody who travels a lot and goes to other countries which the Western media paints as backwards, barbaric, dangerous. I just cannot believe that it feels like the golden years that I've grown up in, at least in the West, are, I think, gone. And it's just really a shame, to say the least, that, our people in power can watch idly by as people run riot, really, in our countries and steal things from people who worked really hard. I think this will mostly affect the middle class or middle income individuals who cannot afford the crazy insurance premiums on these items, who can't just afford to get another one of the items. And that's really unfortunate, because we are the people that are holding these countries up. We are propping them up, and it doesn't feel like we are getting our investments back. It doesn't feel like we are being looked after. And not to mention that, I think there has definitely been a cultural shift around how people perceive having luxury. And I know recently there's been trends such as the old money quiet luxury trend, right? Which is ironic because a lot of people are getting those items from Zara and whatnot, but separate topic altogether. Because of socio-economic factors such as rising inflation, rising cost of living, the increased wealth gap between lower income individuals and high income individuals. All of these things have been a perfect storm to create resentment amongst those who can afford luxury goods in this particular case. And I think that's bolstered by the fact that a lot of these crimes are going unpunished and people feel like they can get away with it, or they feel an entitlement to your items and they feel no remorse as well for those who have lost out on these items, who are devastated, rightly so, for their personal spaces being violated, for their precious items that they worked so hard for. And Brian Boyd did a good post explaining the feeling. People think it's just material items and you can get another one, but it's not about that. Some of them are one of a kind or have a story attached to it, or we worked really damn hard for something. It was really hard to get, and it's more than just the superficial. I don't go around flaunting my wealth, and neither should you. And I do think, to an extent, some of those individuals who have been robbed, maybe you could argue, just for entertaining that perspective, they may have been asking for it if they were posting their exact locations and whatnot and saying, look how much I have. But for the most cases, for most individuals like the you and I's of the world, we have a few items, we seldom go on about it, and yet it will still happen to us. And those are the individuals that, on the off case, you might be able to find an item again to replace yours, but on the other hand, it would be priceless because you have a very specific set of specs, or the sentiment's just not the same as when you bought your original item. And it feels very, very heartless to say that these things don't matter, or people need to get over it, or even those statistic people amongst that group will say good riddance or you deserve it. And I don't think in a free society where we are in, hopefully, well, not right now, but the idea of a democracy is also having a meritocracy and also working to better yourself. I think that's basically the American dream, isn't it? And the dream of the West compared to regimes that we in the West criticize. And actually what it seems right now is that it's almost the opposite. And you really don't get much back for what you put in. People are entitled and feel like bad things should happen to people who work hard. And I just see that as a cultural illness at the moment that's really bubbled up. I've always talked about exit strategies and what we can do and being safe and secure, and let's just talk about that now. What can we actually do to better our situations? Because I do still think that luxury is something worth enjoying. I'm not going to let something like this taint my perspective on how I enjoy something that I've worked hard for. But I think first and foremost, and these might seem drastic, but I think necessary given the direction that the world is going in. And I really do think the first thing to do is consider changing your location if you are at all, able to do so. And I do believe right now the West is sick. We need medicine, and I don't think that the people in current positions of power are going to be the ones to provide it. It feels like they are the ones fanning the flames a bit. So I'm planning my exit strategy. My partner and I, we are doing the most that we can to make ourselves financially free or location independent. Ideally both, and at this moment we're in a pretty enviable position in that we don't have children, we don't have roots to the ground, we can be location independent if we want to. So that is definitely something that is on the cards. And just in terms of some helpful resources for you if you are considering this, I think Nomad Capitalist and Wealthy Expat, I believe, are really good channels that I've consulted for my own personal perusal, and probably you should too if this is something you're looking at, because I do not see how we can have a functioning society where laws and policies are not abided to. And if it's already on the daily, I mean, think about how much it's going to go skyrocketing up, short of a big policy change or change of leadership, which is not going to happen. It just seems like two sides of the same arse, if you pardon my French. But I think the best thing we can do is vote with our wallets and vote with our feet. And that is what I'm definitely going to be doing. Then the next thing is just be willing to invest your time and money into safety and security precautions. Because let's be honest, with great power comes great responsibility. I use this one a lot as it pertains to luxury because it is so true. You should not be owning luxury if you cannot afford to protect them. It shouldn't have to be this way. Obviously, people should know and mind their own business and keep themselves and not steal and whatnot. This is immoral and unethical and all of that. But there are people like this right now going around in the world, and I don't think culturally we're doing much to help that fact in the West at least. And so do what you can therefore to secure your belongings as best that you can. I'm invested in security measures, could be cameras or could be other security measures that I'm not going to be talking about right now because I'm not inviting that kind of drama in my life, okay? And with that also being said, make sure you exercise. Obviously common sense, but common sense is not always common, right? A lot of these thefts happen in plain sight where someone's not looking after or keeping their eye on their bags. One of the thefts that happened in an airport of all places, right? This family wasn't, had their Birkin bags or, Louis Vuitton case somewhere where it wasn't even, they weren't even looking, and so people can nab it. I mean, despite the fact that airports are one of the most secure places that you can be in at any given point, but that aside, always keep your items attended. Don't just trust that people will be okay. Nowadays, we can't have that kind of luxury, okay? Invest that time to learn more about safety infrastructure, invest your money in doing those things. And if you're not willing to do that, I would honestly question why you have luxury goods. It's a sad but an unfortunate truth. And I suppose relating to that point, another tip, suggestion that I have is downsize your collection or get rid of unwanted, unused things if you can. I honestly don't think it is feasible unless you are living in a very, very secure and safe place and you're willing to invest in keeping them that way, both in time and money. Then I don't think collections like people with 50 plus Birkin or Kelly bags can really be that realistic and attainable for, the normal person. And, you should be able to work hard for what you want, but it's not the case anymore. And we can't all afford a Jeffree Star type vault for our handbags. I personally also don't believe in hoarding, which I do feel it is when you own that many bags. Let's be honest. You are not going out every single day mixing up your bags. Nothing interesting is happening literally every single day. But I'd encourage you, especially if you've got so much of your belongings just scattered around and you don't actually have a mental count of what you own and an inventory as well, then I would recommend you go and audit your collections. Take photos of them if you can. It's always good to have a record. If you can insure them, great as well, alluding to the earlier security point I mentioned. But also, take stock of what you use and what you don't, and get rid of stuff that you don't use. That will also free up some funds, which is also nice, and some space. So if I'm not using it, then it's out, and it's been really great to see that collection shrink. Then another tip is a really hard one to do. It's a very delicate balance, but still one that I'm working on and definitely actively try and do, is don't flaunt your wealth, whether that's in public, social media. And I know this can be very subjective. There can be grey areas in this, and look, items have brand logos on them, so it's not even necessarily your fault when it comes to this particular point, but just be aware of your surroundings, be aware of who you're with, make sure that you're with people who don't also create prime target vibes. That's why I personally really enjoy going out with my boyfriend, because someone like him is not someone to be messed around with, and I just feel instantly secure. And also I try and avoid public transport, things like that. Don't post where you are at a given point in time on your social media. Don't go around telling people, you know, you have this and you have that. A lot of things, a lot of crimes I've noticed recently, at least when it pertains to individuals or small businesses, are usually inside jobs, and people are also scouting things out, seeing your patterns, when you come, when you go, what you do, and you don't want to give people the luxury of that. So I personally like to keep a relatively low-key life. What you see on my Instagram or my YouTube is a very deliberately designed set of specific situations that you'll see me in. I think the last thing just to mention is be realistic and pragmatic. Life is long, and this may happen. In fact, I would find it strange and abnormal potentially if you're one of the very few, the lucky few, that did not have an attempted theft or an actual theft in your lifetime. Many things can happen, things are always changing, and there are always something or other that we could not have seen coming. And we are human as well. We make mistakes, as do others. And with that being said, I think a very stoic thing to just leave us on is just to remember that these things can happen, but just because it happens to you doesn't mean life is over. Look, it will be hard. I know from seeing and hearing about all these thefts from others that I know or online, it's super difficult, and the mental toll it takes on you, and the violations, of course. But as long as you are safe and as long as you are healthy, you are not replaceable. Those items could be. These kind of incidents are a wake-up call, and there's a quote, isn't there? A wise man learns from the mistakes of others. And if anything, as a parting message from this video, I don't want to be a depressing one, right? Is that if anything, these instances should signal to you, you know, and create inspiration of how you can get yourself out of these situations. I think not many people consider the fact, oh, it could actually happen to me, until it happens to them. So I hope that this video, just in closing, was helpful. I don't want it to be doom and gloom. Yes, it's reality, but I believe in giving people the icky medicine, right? And not just giving you sunshine and rainbows. That's not what my channel is about. And yes, I do believe in enjoying luxury goods. I will still be wearing my luxury goods, but I'm going to be a lot more discerning about it. All growth, even if it's by resistance and by these challenges, are positive. I think these are very teachable moments, shall we say, and formative moments in our lives to be able to act upon. And so we've got to do what we've got to do to protect our stuff and protect ourselves. So I will leave this video here. It has been quite long. I do hope this was interesting, helpful in some way, or even just comforting that we're going through the same thing. The politics part of it, we're all able to agree to disagree, but if you have any other points, anecdotes to add around this particular theft topic or anything that's happened to you, you can let us know down in the comments below, and hopefully this will be a very constructive conversation that we can help each other on, as opposed to criticize each other on. But I will hope for the best. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.